I did a study when I was in Boston, and we were able to show that there are two areas, and this is what Ben Sessa told before, the prefrontal cortex is dysregulated, and we know a little bit more about this. There's one area called the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex that is too active, overactive, and there's another part, the VMPFC, that is not active enough. And this dysregulation is responsible for not being able to treat correctly the information. And this, on the phenomenological level, translates for these patients as being never safe. I feel never safe, and this explains symptoms like hypervigilance, anxiety, fear. This is always there. They never feel safe. And I would also stress this is not only a theoretical problem, or we can really say we live in a culture where people still live in the contextualization deficit because they really believe that World War II is not over yet, or the Cold War is not over yet. They really feel threatened by countries and think there are Nazi armies attacking them. They really believe that. And because they are so much afraid, and this is in their perception real, they act exactly in the way to provoke that threat. So the problem with contextualization deficit is the person that has not integrated the fact that it's living in the context of the past will act in a manner that will create the threat in real now. That's why it's so important to get awareness of it. Okay, and then there's another mechanism that it's a little bit difficult to explain, but I think it's crucial, and it's related to implicit learning. It's related to Pavlovian operant conditioning. And this is what we observe in animals as well as human beings. And you might say, why should we bother about these things? We are talking about mystical experience, we are talking about human mind and consciousness, and why should we bother about these very basic things? I think it's crucial to understand the dysregulation in these mechanisms, in disorders that are trauma-related and are addictive. Because this is exactly happening in these networks of the brain. That's why I think it's important to explain. So we have the paradigm of classical conditioning. You can have all kinds of setups, and you have a context office room where the light goes on and the subject gets an electrical shock on the head. This is unpleasant, it's painful, and the implicit memory will store this information. This is a dangerous context here. Something bad will happen. And then you can go into another context, let's say bibliothèque, and there's also light going on and nothing happens. So you learn here, I'm safe. The light goes on, nothing happens, I'm safe. So this is called extinction training. The person learns, here I'm safe, there's no reason to be in fear. This is conditioning, learning to have fear, and extinction, unlearning to have fear. And then people come back the next day and they're tested against in the safe context, context B, and the light goes on and nothing happens, and the reaction is measured, are they fearful or not? And so you have an idea what kind of memory trace is there and activated. And this is what we get. We get a discriminative response of the implicit memory and working memory towards this kind of stimuli. First, people learn in the dangerous context to have fear. Then they learn in the safe context not to have fear anymore. You see the skin conductance goes down, and that means there's no more fear, and this is a learned reaction. What is then important, the next day they come back and they're exposed to the context in which they were shocked or not shocked, and we measure the reactivity and we see, oh, people remember correctly, in this context here, bibliothèque, I'm safe. So I'm not showing any fear response. But if they go into the dangerous context, they show again a fear response. And this is correct, because they remember in this context I was shocked. So the implicit memory is making a discrimination between different contexts and stimuli in order to help us to react in the most efficient way, to help us survive. The problem is with trauma patients and addictive patients, this is completely messed up, as I will show you. So we know now extinction recall is impaired in PTSD patients. It means PTSD patients, when they go into extinction learning, they learn like everybody else. They learn in this context, there's no shock, I have no reason to be in fear. The fear reaction goes down, and there's no significant difference between the PTSD group and the control group. But if they go back and the day after, one night of sleep, and they're tested again in this context in which they have learned to be shocked or not to be shocked, what we see that the PTSD patients, they have fear again. They express fear again. Although the control that do not have PTSD, they correctly activate the no fear memory, extinction memory. So this is a big difference in the reactivity of implicit information between these groups. And this is one of the reasons why these patients are always in fear.